The point that I'm trying to make, when you think about what Jordan had to go through in order to be who he was, I'm talking about the visual. You understand? We ain't talking about championships, even though he still has more championships than LeBron, even though he still has more league MVPs than LeBron, even though he still has more finals MVPs than LeBron.
He got a consistent three-point shot, and he's a far better three-point shooter than Michael Jordan. The stat shows it.
The NBA's most polarizing debate has taken a new turn, and this time, it's not just about who is the greatest of all time. This time, it's about the soul of the sport. It's about whether the physicality of basketball's past holds more weight than the athletic precision of its present. It's about whether Michael Jordan endured more punishment than LeBron James ever has. And right at the center of this firestorm are two of the loudest voices in sports, Stephen A. Smith and Kendrick Perkins. These two did not just discuss the LeBron versus Jordan debate, they collided over it. They clashed over what basketball used to be and what it has become. Stephen A. says Jordan endured a brutality that shaped his greatness, while Perkins claims that the game has evolved and simply shed the chaos. This is not just a debate. This is a war between eras, between what we remember and what we witness now. So if you're tired of watered-down comparisons and want to hear the real breakdown of old-school toughness versus modern dominance, you are in the right place. Smash that like button, subscribe to NBA Showdown, and ring the bell because this video is about to tear the roof off the greatest debate in basketball history. Now let's get into it. Stephen A. Smith wastes no time drawing a line in the sand. He opens the conversation by declaring that basketball used to be played with a level of physicality that simply does not exist today. To him, that physical edge was not just a part of the game, it defined it. Stephen A. paints a picture of an era where players had to survive the pain, where getting to the rim meant absorbing a body blow, and where you could not just float through traffic untouched. He is not dismissing today's game, but he is emphasizing that the path to greatness used to be lined with far more resistance. In his eyes, players like Michael Jordan had to endure not just elite competition, but physical warfare on the court. Elbows, forearms, body checks, it was all part of the process. Stephen A. believes that this environment hardened players. It forged their mentality. It shaped how they approached the game and how they earned their legacy. So when he says Jordan had to go through a more physically demanding league, he is not romanticizing the past. He is saying that toughness was not optional, it was necessary. And to him, that makes all the difference when comparing eras.
The game of basketball was played at an elevated level of physicality.
Stephen A. goes a step further and makes a critical distinction. He is not saying players today are not talented. In fact, he admits the talent now is elite, even supreme. But his point is about the path, not the player. He is arguing that the journey to stardom used to be far more brutal. The road to prosperity, as he calls it, was filled with bruises, blood, and mental warfare. You did not just prove your skill, you proved your toughness night after night. Stephen A. does not blame today's players for the shift. He knows the league has evolved. Rules have changed. Officiating has adapted. But his stance is simple. You cannot compare the difficulty of Jordan's climb with LeBron's when the very terrain is different. Jordan had to fight through the bad boy pistons, through hand checks, through clotheslines disguised as defense. LeBron, for all his greatness, rose in an era where the floor is spaced out, defenders are limited by whistle-happy rules, and hard fouls are flagged as flagrant acts of aggression. Stephen A. is not devaluing LeBron. He is valuing the grind that Jordan had to survive. And that grind, in his eyes, makes Jordan's journey not just different, but tougher, more meaningful, and ultimately more legitimate.
The road to prosperity, one could easily argue, was far from, we're not talking about better talent, because the talent today is elite and supreme, and we get that.
This is where Stephen A. Smith gets surgical. He wants people to stop reducing Jordan's legacy to just 6 championships. He is not talking about titles or rings. He is talking about what Jordan had to endure to become who he was. He dives into the trials, the pain, the punishment, and the adversity Jordan had to overcome on his way to greatness. Stephen A. reminds everyone that Jordan was not gifted greatness. He fought for it. He earned it in an environment where everything was stacked against him. And despite that, he not only won more titles than LeBron, but also collected more league MVPs along the way. That matters. Those accolades are not just numbers to Stephen A. They are the result of an individual who rose through fire and conquered a league that tried to break him. He talks about Jordan being harassed by the Pistons, muscled by the Knicks, pushed by the Celtics. Every era-defining team tried to crush him physically, and still, Jordan stood tall. LeBron's resume is spectacular, but Stephen A. is saying it lacks that same struggle, that same visceral battle for greatness. He is not minimizing LeBron's achievements. He is elevating the mountain that Jordan had to climb. And when the terrain is that steep and the summit still conquered, the legacy becomes mythical.
The point that I'm trying to make, when you think about what Jordan had to go through in order to be who he was, I'm talking about the visual. You understand? We ain't talking about championships, even though he still has more championships than LeBron, even though he still has more league MVPs than LeBron, even though he still has more finals MVPs than LeBron.
Kendrick Perkins steps in, and his tone is not passive. It is assertive, even confrontational. He reminds Stephen A. that the league was still extremely physical well after Jordan retired. He uses his own career as proof, pointing to 2004 when he entered the league. And in his opinion, the Detroit Pistons were the greatest defensive team to ever play the game. Perkins is not just talking about reputation. He is talking about a team that physically dominated opponents with controlled aggression, discipline, and a mentality that mirrored the toughness of previous eras. For Perkins, that Pistons squad is the ultimate example that physical basketball did not die in the 90s. It just evolved. His argument is that the idea of physicality being exclusive to Jordan's era is simply not accurate. Perkins believes he lived through an NBA that still demanded grit, toughness, and resilience. He credits that Pistons team as proof that hard-nosed basketball did not vanish. It just took on a more structured, team-oriented form. To him, the toughness of his generation still holds weight, and any attempt to write it off as softer is not just misleading, it is flat-out disrespectful. Perkins is standing up for his era, and he is doing it with the kind of pride that only a warrior who lived it can bring to the table.
Do you realize this? I'm just telling you the physicality of when we came into the league. Do you realize that the Detroit Pistons, in my opinion, was one of the greatest defensive teams ever? Ever. They played the game of basketball.
They won the bad boys.
Stephen A. Smith acknowledges Kendrick Perkins' opinion with a calm yet unwavering response. He does not shout, he does not retaliate emotionally, but his words carry the kind of conviction that cuts deeper than volume ever could. He calmly states that Kendrick is entitled to feel the way he feels, and that is fine. But then he plants his flag into the debate with absolute clarity. LeBron James is number 2 all time, and Michael Jordan is number 1, period. This is not up for debate in Stephen A.'s mind. This is a conclusion built from decades of watching the game evolve, from witnessing greatness across generations. His tone is not dismissive, but it is final. And what makes this moment so powerful is not just the content of the statement, but the emotion behind it. Stephen A. is not just making a claim. He is defending a belief that he considers sacred. He is protecting an era that to him represents the truest form of basketball competition. To him, greatness is not just about stats or longevity. It is about dominance under duress. It is about being the best when the game was at its hardest, when you had to bleed just to survive a playoff series. He respects LeBron, he admires LeBron, but he draws the line when it comes to putting him above Jordan. That boundary is non-negotiable, and Stephen A. makes sure Kendrick and the audience understand that this will never change. It is a conclusion born not of bias, but of belief. A belief that what Jordan had to overcome makes him untouchable at the top.
Kendrick Perkins is entitled to feel the way that he feels, and that's fine. All I'm saying is, my mind on this specific topic will never change.
What?
LeBron James is number 2, and Michael Jordan is number 1. All time.
Kendrick Perkins is not backing down either. He challenges Stephen A's romantic view of old school physicality and calls it what it often was: nonsense. He explains that just because players back then were allowed to tackle, elbow, and even throw punches, it does not mean the game was more physical in a meaningful or constructive way. It just meant the league tolerated more chaos. Perkins is emphatic in stating that the game eventually decided to cut out the foolishness to clean itself up and to evolve into a purer, more skill-based competition. He is not saying players today are not tough. He is saying that physicality is not about fighting or hitting. It is about body control, effort, defensive positioning, and mental stamina. Perkins believes the modern game is still physically taxing, just in a different way. You are still getting screened, bumped, chased, and guarded. The difference is that now, you cannot just use brute force to shut someone down. You have to be smarter, more disciplined. He passionately argues that the NBA was never meant to resemble football, and to him, the league's decision to move away from cheap shots and violent plays was not a sign of weakness. It was progress. A better version of basketball emerged when the game stopped rewarding dirty defense and started emphasizing skill and finesse. Perkins is not tearing down the past. He is rejecting the idea that toughness only exists in the form of aggression. He believes true physicality lies in the grind of a clean, competitive game. And that's the version LeBron has mastered.
But Stephen A., see, this is what I'm saying though. Just because you was allowed to tackle people and throw punches back then, that doesn't mean that the level of physicality was different. They just stopped all the nonsense. That's it. This is not football.
Kendrick Perkins closes his argument with a brutal fact that many Jordan fans struggle to accept. He points out that LeBron James, at nearly 40 years old, is still averaging 30 points per game. That kind of longevity at that level of performance is unprecedented. And the reason for it? According to Perkins, it is LeBron's evolution as a shooter, particularly from three-point range. He confidently states that LeBron is a far better three-point shooter than Michael Jordan ever was, and the statistics back him up. This is not a disrespect to Jordan's mid-range mastery or killer instinct. It is an acknowledgement of how the game has changed and how LeBron has adapted better than anyone. Perkins is highlighting the fact that LeBron's ability to stay effective in a modern pace and space game is no accident. It is a product of work ethic, discipline, and an understanding of how to extend a career through skill. He argues that Jordan never had to develop a reliable three-point shot because the game did not demand it. But LeBron, facing new defensive schemes, new spacing philosophies, and a league that values perimeter shooting more than ever, evolved into a threat from beyond the arc. That is not just greatness. That is strategic, calculated dominance. Perkins uses this point to emphasize that LeBron's ability to adapt to the modern game and thrive within it proves that his greatness is not just about raw talent. It is about intelligence, evolution, and durability. And in a league that constantly changes, staying dominant for over 2 decades is an achievement that deserves the highest respect.
You know why LeBron James is able to average 30 right now at the age of 38? You know why? Because he got a consistent three-point shot. And he's a far better three-point shooter than Michael Jordan. The stat shows it.
What we just witnessed between Stephen A. Smith and Kendrick Perkins was more than just a debate. It was a raw, emotional tug-of-war between 2 eras of basketball, 2 definitions of greatness, and 2 fundamentally different understandings of what it means to be tough. Stephen A. is standing tall for the old-school warriors, the bloodied battles, and the scars that defined legends like Michael Jordan. He believes that greatness forged in pain is a different kind of greatness, that surviving that level of physical punishment builds a player into something that statistics alone can never define. Kendrick Perkins is fighting for the modern game, a game that demands more skill, more discipline, and more strategic intelligence than ever before. He is not denying the toughness of the past, but he refuses to let people treat the present as if it is soft or easy. He sees LeBron James not just as a great player, but as a symbol of what it means to evolve, to endure, and to dominate a game that is constantly changing. This debate will never end. And that is exactly why it matters. Because every generation has its icon, every fan has their truth, and every argument brings us closer to understanding just how complex greatness really is. So now it's your turn. Do you stand with Stephen A. and the legacy of Jordan? Or do you ride with Kendrick Perkins and the evolution of LeBron? Drop your opinion in the comments, hit that like button if you respect the fire of this debate, and don't forget to subscribe to NBA Showdown for more bold, unfiltered breakdowns of basketball's greatest arguments. We don't settle debates here, we ignite them.